Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show. Lynda Roth joining us here live today on Zoom as well as the podcast. And as you may know, she's an author and, of course, a CEO, executive consultant of consulting services. That's LJR Consulting Services, and the website is ljrcs.com. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm great, Jill. Thanks very much.
Well, thanks for being here. Please tell us a little bit about what you do for new time listeners and viewers.
Sure. What I do is I work primarily with mid-market companies, and I help them become what I call more of a business for the 21st century. And to be a 21st century business, you need to, first of all, have your technology up to speed so that you can communicate, because being a 21st century business is all about communication, both digitally and in person. But so much in digitally, our systems can communicate with each other. So instead of the classic, I need to put in a purchase order to a vendor in order for me to receive goods, right? If I have our systems interconnected, if it's that type of vendor that I work with, let's say it's a primary supplier of something I manufacture. And so if I'm connected with those two businesses, then the systems can talk to each other. I can put in an electronic purchase order or just a plain order to my supplier. My supplier can then ship it, send me shipping information electronically, etc. And so I don't have to worry about a lot of the normal communication that might get messed up.
Communication, is that one of the biggest issues we all face?
Communication and being what I call an interconnected business. An example that I talk about a lot is I had a prospect call me, and he was a manufacturer of the dishes that go into frozen food dinners. And he was complaining about the fact that he got rush orders all the time from his food manufacturers. And I said, well, the reason you're getting rush orders is because your product is not high on their list of things to look at when they're preparing their schedule for what they're going to, make going down their manufacturing line. So at the last minute, they look and say, oh, I don't have enough of this size dish, right? So they send you a rush order. I said, the way that you can eliminate that is if you get connected with their ERP system, then you see what their schedule is. And then you know what they're going to need, because you can look at their inventory and you can look at their schedule, and then you can just send them if you have that type of relationship with them.
Got it. All right. What else? A lot more to your company that people don't know about. So what did you have in mind for your audience today?
Well, just that primarily you don't have to struggle as a mid-market business with how to figure out what you need to either bring up your technology. So like, for example, a lot of clients I work with, they're on older systems that they've had since like the late 1990s, and a lot of manual work and stuff like that. And so they just need to get up to speed internally within their four walls before they can become what I call an interconnected business, right? So you have to get your stuff together in between your four walls. And many, many mid-market companies today are don't stay up to date on a lot of the systems and information technology that they need and should use. So that's the first thing I do is I go in and I do a review and lay out what they should be doing. And then I bring vendors to them. The next problem that a lot of mid-market businesses have is that maybe like a current client I'm working with now, it's like, we know we need new systems, right? We just don't know where to find them, and we can't afford the big ones. So, if you talk about an ERP system or a CRM system, they'll, their friends will tell them, oh, Dynamics and Oracle and all that, but those are multi-million-dollar systems. And a lot of mid-market companies just can't stretch that far. But the reality is there is numerous systems that handle what I call the mid-market. It's just that they're not very well known. And so I keep relationships with those suppliers. And so then when I get a client, like the one I have right now that says, oh, it's exactly what they said the first meeting I had with them. We know we need this. Or we've been on a system for the last 25 years or whatever. It doesn't work for us anymore, but I can't afford Oracle or Dynamics or any of the other big ones. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I got the solutions for you. And they were overwhelmed by the number of solutions I brought for them that were very affordable for them. And, we had brought the vendors in, we had meetings, and we selected one. And
It's
now we're
awesome.
implementing it.
So you can make things affordable. And in the long run, it's about helping the customer become more profitable, right? So
Exactly.
you know the latest and greatest with the software. They may not. Interesting. 'Cause I don't even know what our Oracle is, to be honest. Could you just share it with someone in layman's
Sure,
terms?
I'm sorry.
What is Oracle? No, it's some of
Well,
the people might be asking the same question. Thank you.
Oracle is a software company, a very
Okay.
large one,
Okay.
and they handle the large, what we call ERP and CRM systems that big companies use.
Okay.
And so those are multi-million dollar systems to buy and multi-million dollar implementations. And so most mid-market companies can't afford that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the dilemma they get in. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a meeting that somebody's brought me into, and that's what I hear of, I'm on this old system I've been on for 30 years or whatever, and it's not doing what we need anymore, or it's not being upgraded anymore because the software company that originally created it is out of business. And so we're kind of stuck, right? And we don't know where to go. It'd be kind of like in the automotive industry, if all you knew about were the top automobile manufacturers, and you didn't know that Chevrolet and Pontiac and Ford existed, right?
Yeah.
And so I bring them Chevrolet, Pontiac, and Ford. And some of the others. I don't mean to leave anybody out, but some of the others that sell to the average uh,
Mm-hmm.
citizen, right? That needs transportation for their family.
Got it. Thank you
So
for
it's the
sharing.
same kind of thing. Yeah.
All right. So, what else besides offering software solutions do you offer with your consulting services?
Yes.
Good
Well,
segue. Good segue.
yes, good segue. Because it always ends up with some amount of software, but it starts out as, for me, as a strategy discussion on how do you become an interconnected 21st century business, and what do you want to be. So we go through a lot of discussions in terms of where they see themselves in the next 10 years or so, where they are
Hmm.
now, that they feel that they're stuck at. And, like the client that I've been working with, they sell all over the world. And so they had a ton of manual processes. They had a ton of information from their manufacturing that was on spreadsheets. I mean, I can't tell you how many spreadsheets that they were using to track everything. And since they're highly regulated by agencies, not only in the US, but over in Europe, having those older systems and a lot of information in spreadsheets just doesn't meet the needs of the regulatory agencies.
Got it.
So, um, so you end up, a lot of companies are like this. They end up kind of in a catch-22 where they're being a lot of pressures being put on them by customers, by regulatory agencies, etc. And they go out looking for solutions. Their friends talk to them about the expensive solutions that they can't afford, and so then they feel stuck.
Hmm.
And that's generally when somebody, like their accountant or somebody else that they work with, say, why don't you talk to Lynda? And that's how that gets started.
No. And by the way, let's remind everyone of all the ways we can reach out to Lynda. Lynda with the Y, by the way. How do we do so?
Yes, my telephone number, which is the easiest, is 818-216-7264. That's my cell number. And my email address is Lynda with the Y, Lynda at ljrcs.com.
Perfect. And we also have to go over the basics because there's new people tuning in each and every time. So tell us a little bit more about the company, where you're based out of, and of course, the work that you could do. It's nationwide, right?
Yes, it's nationwide. I am based in St. Louis, Missouri. Right now, I used to live in Southern California and spent most of my career in Southern California, actually. I was raised in St. Louis and moved in my early 20s due to a job offer with Levi Strauss, moved to California. Wasn't very happy with Northern California and decided to move someplace else. And so at that time, my sister was opening restaurants for a restaurant chain, and she was in Houston, Texas. So
Hmm.
I was looking for warm places to live. So I called her up and I said, I'm going to move. And I picked out a few cities. I said, one
Wow.
of them is Los Angeles, and another is in Texas, either Houston or Dallas, and Atlanta in Georgia. And she said, move to LA and I'll move with you. So that's what we did.
Wow. And here you
And
are.
here I am back in St. Louis. There was a point in time then after a long career that my parents had both passed, and I just felt that it was time to move back to St. Louis and be with family, closer to family.
All about the roots, and you're still able to
Right.
do the amazing work you're doing. And then somewhere along the line, she's like, okay, I'm going to start writing. And you became an author. We need to
Yes,
bring
I
that up.
did.
Please, please don't be so
Yes.
modest.
Yes, I wrote my book, Digital
Digital
Transformation,
transformation. Mm-hmm.
an executive guide to survive and thrive in the new economy. And the primary purpose for writing this book was, first of all, to kind of get out of me what I wanted to say,
Mm-hmm.
but also to help business owners uh, go through and understand how business was changing in the 21st century. That's that's what digital transformation is all about. Is business is changing in the 21st century, and it's not the same as it was in the 20th century and before that. And and it has to do with technology. And so you need to become a digital business for the 21st century, interconnected, the example I was giving, and also working, with your customers in more of a digital world, so that they can go in and put in their own orders. They can follow it, their orders and everything. And a lot of people complain about, well, that takes the person, the personality out of it, or the human touch. But you still have the ability for your customers to have human touch with you if they want to. But the reality is that that's how we're functioning now, is interconnected, and so you should have the technology within your four walls and then connected.
Oh, what happened to my camera? That
I
keeps
don't know, you're
happening.
gone.
I'm here though. You still hear me, right?
Yes, I can
Yeah.
still hear you.
So
Yeah.
for some reason, when I touch the computer, I would hit it. Hold on.
Now I see you again.
No,
Now you're
see,
gone.
I'm not, you witnessed it. I hit my computer yesterday just like that and it went off and it just did the same thing. I'm sorry. Okay, but I
That's
gotta
fine.
ask, when did this really all come to head? Like think about it. I'm thinking about 2020 when COVID hit and a lot of these companies were not digitally up for
That's
anything.
correct.
So tell me what happened when the pandemic hit and for your company, but then all the companies now that I'm sure that you gained business from, which I hope you did. Could you share what happened with that?
Well, they scrambled really fast.
Yes. Uh-huh.
um, because a lot of them did not have ways, especially ways for their employees to be able to work from home and connect to the systems that they needed to have access to and connect to each other. So, that's how Zoom became so popular.
Yeah.
Was
Hey, here we
you
are.
know, Zoom had been a small company that had just started recently, and all of a sudden it became the word that everybody knew, because it was the best way for co-workers who could no longer be
Yeah.
in an office with each other to get together, right? And also things like, I belong to a couple of business groups. One of them is the Association for Corporate Growth, and so I can go to I can physically go to my St. Louis chapters events, and sometimes I'll go out to the Kansas City events. And when I used to travel
Wow.
California, I would still pop in with the group in California that I had been involved with.
Mm-hmm.
But now with Zoom, especially during the pandemic, now a lot of these organizations have cut out their Zoom
Yeah.
meetings, but the only way you could now get together in your normal monthly meetings with these type of organizations was on Zoom. And so we'd have all the Zoom meetings. And so then I could go to more chapters.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have to be ones I had to travel to because I could go on Zoom. So there's some things that I miss now that we've quote backed off and gotten quote back to normal. Right.
Do you think it's all going to come back though? Has it? I mean, are people mostly doing virtual now with their businesses for everything, for meetings, for corporations, or people are, I thought, at least in New York City, I know a lot of companies making, people come back to the office, not with the virtual world. And a lot of people aren't happy about that because people got used to working from home and they feel more productive. And it's like a big thing. Like, what's.
Yes, that is a big issue. And I know some companies are working to try and force their employees to come back. I think that's a mistake because, first of all, in the United States, we have a worker shortage anyway, and it's going to be getting
Wow.
worse as the people in the baby boomer. You have to realize that the baby boomer generation, the largest generation in all of history, right, is quickly moving into their latter stages of life,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not working. So they're retiring, and the generations behind us are nowhere near as large.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to have technology to make up just for the human shortage of people, because you can't have all the people anymore. So you're going to have technology for that, number one. Then number two, um, again, partly because of the human shortage, but also being able to meet with other people. So, like most of my career in California, I couldn't work for anybody unless I wanted to travel, right? I couldn't work for anybody that wasn't in Southern California. Now, the good news is Southern California was a big area
Mm-hmm.
with lots of employment opportunities and lots of consulting opportunities. But if I had lived in St. Louis during most of my career, I wouldn't have had the opportunities I had in Southern California.
Yeah.
Where today, I can, from right here sitting in my office in St. Louis, I can work with anybody.
Yeah. It's so true. It is so true. I apologize, but I'm glitching a little bit.
That's okay.
I don't know why. I need to let the station know. But in the meantime, what else did you want to share?
Well, I guess the primary thing I want to share is that don't be afraid of upgrading your technology and becoming more of a digital business,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where everything is going in the 21st century. I liken it to the 20th century. In my book, I start out in the very beginning talking about how life changed in the 20th century with
Mm-hmm.
all the quote technological inventions we had. Now, those weren't digital technological inventions, but they were the light bulb, right? Using electricity, um, everything that we ended up having in the 20th century as a new way of life, having refrigeration, having um, all the appliances that we had. My dad built a business on implementing air conditioners and all kinds of home and office appliances during the 20th century. So the 20th century is called the industrial age because of how all of our industry got built. If you look at, right before the turn of the 19th century to the 20th century, life was very different than it was 20 years later in the roaring 20s of the 20th century, and then moving on up to getting really industrialized after World War II. Because the other thing is World War II brought on, well, both World War I and World War II brought on a lot of requirements on the United States, right? And so industry got built up that then became standard after the wars. And so mercifully, we haven't had to have wars, but the 21st century to me is going to end up being considered the digital century, where now you have to take the inventions that we have that are digital and apply them to your business just like you did in the industrial age. So and in the book, that's one of the things I talk about is the comparison between the industrial, what was considered the industrial age, which was most of the 20th century, and now most of the 21st century is going to be the information age.
Interesting. Sorry about my glitches there.
That's okay.
Okay, interesting. And wow, technology just has come a long way. But what are your thoughts on now? Everyone's talking about AI and artificial intelligence and this
Uh-huh.
chat GBT and everything taking over people's jobs. And I mean, probably affecting a lot of the companies you work with. What is your take on that? I mean, since you've been in, in this business for so long.
Well, again, I know that people get nervous when new things come out, and you're reading a lot now about the jobs that technology is taking, especially things like chat GBT and artificial intelligence, right? But as I mentioned, the population behind the boomers is not as big, and it keeps getting smaller. So you're not going to have the people that you had in the 20th century in the 21st century. They're just not going to have them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't expect, like let's talk about the factory floor. I have a Corvette, and last year,
What type of Corvette? Hold on. You can't just say you have a Corvette and then not tell me the details. Look at you. I love it.
I guess I've been a sports car nut all my life, and this is my third vet.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the third one. And before that I had Trans Ams. But I've always been a sport, I'll call it a sports car. When I graduated from high school and it came to where I was going to go to college and when I was going to go to college, my dad wanted me to stay in St. Louis and go to school. And so one day during the summer, I'm outside with a friend of mine, and this car comes down, the '69 Roadrunner. Now, that was a fairly new car. It was just a year old at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyway, it came driving down, and it turns in my driveway, and I'm like, "Ooh, who's that?" And
What's
then my
that?
dad, yeah, and then my dad gets out. This hot car. My dad gets out of the car, and so I
Oh,
go
wow.
running over. Daddy, Daddy, whose car is that? And you had to have known my father because he had what I call this Cheshire cat grin when he was, you know, being a bit of a prankster. And he kind of
Mm.
looked at me with that look, and he opens his hand with the keys and he goes, "It can be yours." And he
Oh,
goes, "Why don't you take it out for a test drive?" So okay,
you must have melted. Okay.
did. I dumped the friend and and took a quick spin in my new '69 Roadrunner, right? And I came back, and so then my dad goes, "Okay." Now he's into businessman bargaining time, and he said, "Okay, here's the deal: you stay in St. Louis and go to school, and you can have this car."
Wow.
And it took me about 10 seconds to say, "Deal done."
Oh, what a sweet story. That is beautiful. What type of vet was it, by the way?
No, it wasn't a vet. It was at the time
Uh, uh,
Plymouth had Plymouth because it was really a big car, but Plymouth had their standard like family car, right?
mm-hmm.
And then they had souped it up and had what they called a Roadrunner. And I mean, the horn on it was the meep meep from the Roadrunner in the Roadrunner cartoon. It really
I
was.
love it. Yes.
And so it was a little bit souped up. Well, it was a lot souped up in terms of engine, and it had a manual transmission in it, on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it was made to look more like a sports car than a sedan as best they could,
Yeah.
but it was still a sedan at heart. but it had
Awesome.
but it had a fast engine in it, and it had a manual transmission in it, so I was happy.
Wow, what a beautiful story. Oh, God bless his soul. Oh, he's shining down over you now that you're talking about the story and just like so happy. Oh, that's so
Exactly.
sweet.
Yeah. It was really a wonderful surprise. And and I wasn't really, excited about going away to school. If I was going to go anywhere away from school, I would have gone to Mizzou, which is just 2 hours away in Columbia, Missouri, as opposed to St. Louis. That's where all my friends were going. And they had just recently opened the University of Missouri in St. Louis campus at that time. So it was real easy just to go to, although actually I ended up going to a community college first to get my IT degree, and then I went to the University of Missouri in St. Louis.
Got it. Well, thank you so much. I apologize. We're just about out of time.
Okay.
Would you
We'll talk
mind
to you.
sharing the best form and all forms of contact?
Yes. The two best ways to reach me, the very best is my phone, which is 818-216-7264. And that's a cell phone. And then the second best is my email, which is Lynda, Lynda, at ljrcs.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Pleasure having you
Thank you,
here
Jill. It was
and
great
looking
having.
forward, thank you, to the next time we get to connect. Thank you so much,
Okay, thank
Lynda.
you.
We'll talk soon. Have a great
Uh-huh.
day. And to all of
You
our
too.
listeners, stay tuned. More of the show's on the way.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.